welcome to a brand new episode of Getting to the Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee. Not to be confused with Robert Lee, but Rob Lee. And today's guest is writer, illustrator, Michael Bracco. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Bracco.
Bracco.
Bracco works fine.
Bracco's Modern Life. No.
Oh my God. If you have any idea how many times I heard that in middle school.
Oh, wow. But welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
This is great. And kind of reading over your bio, I think I've had tangential kind of maybe back in interest in some of the stuff you've done outside of even knowing who you are. And I was just like, oh, run that back. And I was just reading certain things. I was like, I've reached out to these people before. Oh, I've been here before. So yeah, I want to get into it a little bit.
That's awesome.
And, talk about your background. What I try to do in this show is give very general, and I prefer to let the guests tell their story and what their background is and how they want to tell it. So if you would share with us, what is your background, elevator pitch, or however you want to hit it off, but what's your background?
As far as I guess non-specifically, I am an artist that grew up in northern New Jersey and moved down to Baltimore for MICA about 23 years ago, and I've lived here ever since. I went to school at MICA to be an illustrator and an art teacher, and I got out of school and immediately got a job, which I'm still working at the same place, teaching in Ellicott City, teaching middle school art. And I've spent the time since then writing and illustrating comics. I started a business called Spaghetti Kiss, so I do a lot of apparel design with a lot of weird science fiction and fantasy creatures and robots. And I also do a lot of performance art with a very strange but wonderful group called Super Art Fight.
Yeah. We'll be talking about that a little bit, I think.
I kind of figure.
So yeah, it's interesting because I had to stumble into the comic thing a little bit for myself, right? I was a kid, forever ago, and I had this comic, and it was just basically action teams, some pastiche of X-Men or what have you, but a teacher got a hold of it, and she was like, did you do this? I was like, yeah, I was going to get in trouble because I've gotten in trouble before for finishing the test and then hurry up and sketching something. And she was like, yeah, this is actually pretty good. You're 10 or 11 or whatever. And I was like, huh. So get the whole thing. Somebody got some attention, Baltimore School of the Arts, bong, bong, bong. And then I really didn't go any further with it. It was just I shifted to something else. And fast forward to kind of now, within the last year and a half, I didn't think I had the bandwidth or the stamina to try to draw everything. It just, I don't have it anymore. I just don't have that desire anymore, but I do have the desire to kind of come up with stories and write things and things like that. So I write a comic now, and I kind of stumbled into this thing I wanted to do as a kid. And that was really cool for me to kind of stumble into it through podcasting.
Well, I think the stumbling into it as a kid, first of all, that's awesome that you got back to it. Second of all, I think the stumbling into the thing you wanted to do as a kid is really an important aspect of it. I'm 41, so I grew up in middle school and high school in the 90s. And so, in northern New Jersey, in kind of an area that was a mix of, middle class and very upper class. And I remember being this skinny little target of a kid and growing up just loving comics. And I didn't actually read a ton of them, but I would look through them over and over and over. I didn't have the focus to really sit down and commit to reading them all the time. So, and I remember being in love with them and drawing out of them. And I actually remember in middle school getting having my parents called in because I was constantly drawing in class. And they're like, your kid, he's getting B's and he could totally get A's if he would just close his sketchbook and pay attention. So I got handed the whole you better do this right. You better put that pencil down and start paying attention. And then as soon as I stopped drawing in class, I started failing everything. And it was just and my parents, who have always been amazingly supportive, were very much like, no, keep drawing. We'll write you notes. We're a little sad that you're only going to be a B student, but at least you're not failing and you found a way to like pay attention. And then I got to high school, and I brought up my age because when I was going through high school in the 90s, it was not okay to like comics.
Right.
It was like, kiss your dating life goodbye, kiss your social life goodbye. It was really, really a hard thing to be into. And so I just like, not cool, don't want it anymore, and gave it up.
Right.
And it wasn't until I was graduating MICA when I was like starting to discover comics again. And, being handed a lot of the like, the stuff that everybody got handed in the early 2000s that was like, yeah, it's just superheroes. Not that there's anything wrong with superheroes, but it felt so finite. And I remember getting handed things like Battle Angel Alita, and which is this crazy manga about this cyborg girl and just her like her journey to feeling more human, or The Dark Knight Returns, which, even though that creator, Frank Miller, turned out way different than I hoped as a human being, his early work very much was like this questioning the world using science fiction and Batman and The Dark Knight Returns. And I just became obsessed again. And then I just started just making comics, starting at like when I was 21, and just doing the thing that brought me so much joy as a kid, and being terrible at it, but still like, I'm a screen printer, so I would like screen print covers and like photocopy the insert. And I was like running anthologies on the MICA campus, and like getting other people to make comics and putting it all together. I actually just stumbled onto a bunch of these. I had this, I'm air quoting and saying company called Candy Coated Sinister. And it was just all people who didn't make comics trying out the medium and diving in. And it was bliss. And it was just that feeling of like, oh my God, I feel like I'm 12 again, but with the ambition of a 22-year-old. And here I am, 20 years later, and I still have that same feeling about making comics. It doesn't have to be what you're told it's supposed to be. And it's so this joyous, childlike, amazing act that is forever challenging. I always am being asked to draw something I've never drawn before, or write something I've never written before. And it's the best.
That's fantastic. I think like, I always have issues when I talk to people when it comes to like having a conversation around art, because people have an idea of this is specifically what art is. And what you were describing earlier of like, you're working with people who've never done it before, and it's like, work within this medium. And I've been doing that recently with podcasting. Like, some people, I take a very artistic kind of view of it, not just, I got a microphone and I'm just going to talk some shit or whatever. Not my lane. I don't really like to do that. I like to craft something. I try to add value, but I try to tell a story, or I try to get something out there that makes you feel something. And I try not to sound pretentious when I'm saying it either. Because I was realizing how pretentious it sounded. But
I think whenever you're that into something, it's hard. I think the thing that keeps, because I don't think you sound pretentious at all. I think that when you speak with something and there's just joy in your voice when you geek out about it, that's what kind of obliterates the pretension. You know what I mean? And that's all I hear is you talking about the craftsmanship of podcasting.
Well, thank you. Yeah. And working with, like, I've been playing with audio for years, but as far as like saying I'm a podcaster and doing podcasts since 2009, and I was like 24. I was at a birthday party and I was just like, I am washed. I am exhausted. I was like making a lot of money, first job out of college. And I was just like, I am creatively stifled here. Like, I don't have anything. And I was kind of one of those people that I needed to express something, and I didn't care how or which way I was going to express it. And it turns out I am better at speaking it, or I enjoy speaking it more than trying to write it, but I've enjoyed writing it as well. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of direction I've gone into it. But for the longest time, I was just sitting there for like the first 2 years of my career, like quote unquote, being happy, you know, making money, chasing that dream out of college. Great. But then just like, I am doing nothing. This sucks. And I had to come to a place where I was like, I need to do something creative, and I need to figure out what was creative and how we describe creative or creativity. So I ask you in that same way, how would you describe creativity? Do you think it's something that's a finite thing? Do you think it has and that's a really broad question, I know.
Yeah.
But for you, like what kind of label, what kind of attachment would you put to it?
Oh, I think it's a great question. And I come at that from a few different viewpoints. Since I'm an art teacher, I'm always trying to quantify creativity. You know, teaching art, teaching 11, 12, and 13-year-olds, which, you know, I always get the same response when I say that that's the age group I teach. Middle school, I still think of as the worst 3 years of my life. And I almost didn't take the job. I love my teaching job. And, you know, that middle school as like the level that they're learning at is they want to do things on an adult level. They aren't able to do it fully, but they're able to recognize that it's not as good as they want it to be. Mm-hmm. So that's where a lot of this like creative frustration, this conundrum of creativity kind of comes in play. And, you know, you work with kids, you try to help them foster like their creative problem solving skills. And you always hear parents and other teachers see kids work up on the walls. And they're like, oh my God, these kids are so talented. Look at this. Oh, it's so great in art. They get to express themselves. And that always bothered me so much because number one, talent, I think, is a really big misnomer when it comes to creativity. I think, yes, talent exists, but talent is magical. Talent is like that 1 in a million who without any effort can just, bam, do something.
Right.
And these kids aren't talented. That kind of takes a crap on the work and energy and learning and the science of what they do. And, you know, the other big thing that they say is, oh, these kids, like, it's so great that they have art, they can express themselves. Like, that's the easiest thing in the whole world. And I mean, true self-expression, I mean, that's the human condition. That's what we're trying to figure out how to do before we die. And very few of us get to do that.
Right.
And so I find that talent is BS and self-expression is the hardest thing in the world. And creativity is the science to attaining those two things. And so creative problem solving is very like complicated binary. Mm-hmm. It's very much like, hey, I want to make a thing. Let's explore it. Let's ask questions. Let's have discussions. Let's ask every yes and no that we possibly can. And then figure out what's been done, cancel that out. Take some tropes, choose the ones that we can, take on in new ways. And sure. And doing this with, 13-year-olds and watching them and kind of fostering that makes me realize that creativity is the building of techniques in order to solve a problem through, in this case, visual art, or through writing, or through conversation, or whatever the art form is. And that is a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
And it's something that you can explore for your whole life. I find with comics, every story I've done, everything that I dove into started off with a what if question.
Okay.
Hey,
yeah.
You know, like that comic from Marvel back in the day.
Series,
I loved that comic.
Uh-huh.
And so the idea is like everything is a what if, and every story I've ever done is like, well, what if this happened? I know that the book that I have been doing for the past 8 years, it's called The Creators, mm-hmm. and it's about young people who can bring their imaginations to life through their artwork.
Yeah.
And the idea from it came from, I found out I was going to be a dad in 2012. And I started going through all my old children's books just to get excited about being a dad. And I came across this book, which I thought everybody knows this book. It turns out not as many people know about this book as I thought. But I came across this book called Harold and the Purple Crayon.
Sounds familiar, yeah. Okay,
so Harold and the Purple Crayon is a very, very simple book about it's a black and white with a spot color of purple. Okay. And it's a kid sitting in a blank bedroom with a purple crayon, and he's bored. He has nothing to do. So he draws a window. And he looks out the window, and he's like, man, there's nothing to see. So he draws the moon. And he's like, oh, okay, I can see the moon. And then he's like, man, I wish I could go and visit the moon. So he crawls through this window that he draws and just starts drawing a world and exploring it. And so I was reading this book, and I was like, man, what if this actually happened in the real world?
Yeah.
How screwed up would that be? Because with everything and that kids go through, that young people go through,
yeah.
And if a kid had a power, we wouldn't treat them well. And this thing would be fueled by emotion, and we would treat them with nothing but fear and hate, and all these bad things would happen, and then we'd blame the kid instead of ourselves. Yeah. And so I started this kind of conversation with myself, and then would talk about it with my wife, and would just go back and forth. And then from that, exploded this whole world that I wanted to explore.
That's great. And I'd like, those are the types of stories that kind of catch me, like the what if piece, because, I'm in my regular day job, I'm a data analyst. So critical thinking is a thing, and it's like problem solving, creative problem solving, being able to pivot. And I've somehow leveraged just me overthinking stuff into a career. So go figure. So I want to get into a few questions related to Baltimore, and then at the end I'm going to hit you with some quick rundown questions, some Baltimore related questions. These were not included when I initially sent over questions. This last group of three, and they're ridiculous. But this question, let's see. So who are some artists that you admire, like being in the medium and being a writer and an illustrator? Who are, let's say, a few writers that you admire and a few illustrators that you admire?
Okay. So one of the tough things with this is I find that a lot of the staple ones that I loved younger, I grow up and they grow up, and it's really hard to have your heroes not turn out the way that you want them to, which sounds really silly and pie in the sky, but it's very true. So I find that my list currently is a newer one.
Sure.
And it's one that is both fueled by people who I consider colleagues who are in the indie comics community, but also people that I've seen just as a fan. I think my favorite writer in all of comics is Brian Kvon.
Okay, yeah.
He is the ultimate what if writer, and as far as let me qualify that statement. He is the ultimate combination of a what if writer and a entertaining writer.
Yes,
there's just this mix of fun and wonder in his books. And everything that he's ever done has made me really look at the world around me and develop as a person. My favorite example, of course, is the one that I've passed around to so many people who have never read a comic before, is Y: The Last Man.
Yes.
Which, if obviously you've read it.
I own the hardbacks.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. So the concept, which again was such a huge inspiration for me, was what if every male on the planet just died?
It's been real, guys.
And this is long enough ago that even though we're aware of this kind of thing, it wasn't on the tips of our tongues talking about how patriarchal our society is. And seeing somebody explore oh, hey, all the men just disappeared. Look at how, on one level, because of how set up for the men it is, it just falls apart.
Right.
And then let's just spend time watching how women are well, look at this shit they laid for us. Let's go build it back up and make it amazing. And It's just, and it's this very existential, incredible journey. And then to piggyback off of that, although I love his book Saga, it's not my favorite thing he's ever done, but the artist he works with, I am insanely inspired by. I get bogged down in little details, and I find that she, as an artist, has this insane and intense energy in every line that she does, and mixes it with just this crazy creativity and fantastical thinking and character design that I just can't get enough of it.
Fiona Staples?
Fiona Staples, yeah.
Yeah, that like Why the Last Man, my man's Dan, he got me onto it. I was like just in a spot and just had like a really rough time, and I needed some media to kind of like hook myself to. And he just started giving me like the trades. He's like, read this. And I'm not a fast reader, even with comics or what have you. So I was just like, oh, okay. And then it's like maybe 2 weeks. And then he was like, did you finish that one? I was like, I did. And then he's like, well, here's the other one. I was like, I'll take 2. And I just went through, got those 2 done. And my girlfriend is like, she reads Saga or it has like some of the trades, and she loves it. And she always talks about it. It's always with us in terms of like conversation. There's always some pop culture reference. Me, it's like 80s action movies. Her, it's just like, yeah, so in Saga, this happened. I was like, huh? What are you talking about?
Oh, yeah, man. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is I think that writer is amazing at like creating pop culture that is both very entertaining and very fun, but also very meaningful. And I think that's, in an age where, I mean, with all the TV and movies that we kind of like take in through streaming, that feels like, oh, they're like just doing this idea, but different. It's cool to see a creator who is really trying to come up with like new ideas and really push the boundaries and keep it meaningful.
I like that. Let's see. So what's one of the most rewarding parts of being a creator in this region, in the Baltimore area? And I guess the counter to that, what would be one of the more challenging aspects of being here and being a creator?
Oh, okay. I could tell you about the positives and negatives about being a creator. As it pertains to Baltimore, I kind of find that the positives outweigh the negatives so heavily.
All right.
That I don't know if I could think of a negative. Like I can think of a lot of negatives to being like a practicing artist and trying to build a living off of it. But I don't think any of them are specific to like where I am. I mean, if you think about it, Baltimore is a city that has a crazy history that is filled with so much like, I mean, on one hand, there's a lot of the like, on the surface bad stuff that everybody that does it, like we were talking about this before, that everybody that doesn't live here is like, oh, you live in Baltimore. Are you okay? And I'm like, yes, I love this city. It's such it's a fuel for creativity. And I think that it's small enough that there's enough community. Like I know everybody else I know most everybody else that makes comics in Baltimore, and I know most everybody else that designs and prints T-shirts in Baltimore. I know like a huge amount of the art teachers in Baltimore, and that sense of community, that sense of camaraderie is so intense in this town. I also think just as access. So I make, which is really difficult right now, but I make most of my living as an artist doing shows, conventions, festivals, street fairs, things like that. And I've never been good at the interwebs. And, it's never been my forte. I do my best and, it's fine, but I'm very much an extrovert. I'm very much a people person. I'll work 4 days in a row, 12 hours a day on a convention floor, and it's over. And I'm like, woo, let's go for a beer. And the great thing about Baltimore is we have a ton going on in the city, and we're 2 hours away or 3 hours away from everything you could ever want.
Totally.
So like I do normally, not this year, but I do like 40 shows a year.
Wow.
Conventions, festivals, like I said before. And I if all of them dried up and were like, we're not going to have you back, I'd be like, oh, this sucks. And then I'd spend 6 months and I'd find 40 different shows. There's so many people so hungry for art and willing to support. I'm just always so amazed at the amount of, I don't even want to say support, because I don't feel like people are just buying stuff from artists around here because, it's so nice to support you. Yeah. No, people are like actively looking for thought-provoking and interesting and alternative things to what they're going to find on Amazon or in a store. And we're a good hub.
One of the things I've been trying to throw out there and get this idea across, because trying to grow, trying to put something out there and put out just good stuff, and just creating good stuff, because we're attached to like social media and the way that we are, people just, set it and forget it. I can just schedule this, I have this post go out there and people will come. And it's like, no, you need to look for people to endorse what you're doing. Not just support, endorse it, like be an evangelist for it. And one of the things that one of the things I did, it was a goofy conversation, and it was a little bit of a what if, actually, now that I think about it. So I don't know, because we're close to the same age. If you watched SWAT Cats back in the day.
Oh, I never like religiously watched it, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
So I remember like my girlfriend's a few years older than me, or have you, and she'd never heard of the cartoon. So I was sitting there and I was just talking to her, and I was just riffing one day, and I was like, I feel like there has to be like, a judicial wing of like SWAT Cat, just having that, like, they're the law and order. We need justice. Like, who are the lawyers in Mega Cat City? And I was just like ranting on about it. And she was like, what are you talking about? I was like, so there's no attorneys at Claw. There's no special kittens unit. And she was like, you're stupid. What are you talking about? And I was like, this has legs. So we just started writing different stuff. So she's done a few comics as well, and she's a writer, and she's helped me with a few installments of it. But I've done like 12, and I was like, one of the things I wanted to do, because I have a relationship with a few of the people that run different conventions, BlurredCon, for example. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I can get them to just say, here's a table. I was like, if I get there, like, just that whole stumbling thing I was talking about before, if I get there and have like a table with my goofy book that was just a podcast joke, I was like, that would be amazing. That's like the ultimate what if for me. And it came out of just some conversation that, we eventually turned into a podcast. And I was like, this is great. And I think like people here would support it because people like cats, and so people like cats.
They very much do. And as a cat lover myself, I am surprised. I did a cat design recently for a t-shirt. It's this cute little black cat, and exploding out from behind it is this giant demon monster. And the idea is it's the nature of all cats. And I was like, oh, this makes me laugh. People were just like, oh my God, a cat, here's money. And it was amazing to me.
It's ridiculous because I'll send you over a few things, what have you, if you're interested. But I try to make a little reference to The Firm, like that movie, in some of the part of the story, and it just gets stupid. And it's very
this
much
sounds great. I am so in.
It's very much my personality and my co-host personality. And it's like one part where it's like, yeah, so you took a bunch of money from that company you're working for, right? Justice. No. But you took money, like Cayman Islands, like printers. No, Justice. We're going to fund this. We're going to take down everyone in Catlanta or whatever. It's just.
Oh my God.
I like puns. I like puns a lot.
I was going to say this book must be at least like 75% puns.
Closer to 80, but yeah, okay. It's up there. It's up there. So let's see. I want to talk about Super Art Fight a little bit, and I want to kind of craft that into one, you describing it, and two, I want to talk about wrestling just a touch, because I have an observation on that. But
okay, you should know. I'm actually not a wrestling fan, even though I don't have anything against wrestling. I don't know a lot about it. So you can ask me questions, and I'm going to pull answers directly out of my butt.
All right, fair enough. I'm looking forward to that. So describe Super Art Fight, and then I'll ask you the question afterwards.
Sure. Okay. So Super Art Fight is a stage show. It's a live, well, right now it's not a live stage show, but usually it is a live stage show that is, it's kind of like professional wrestling. However, instead of fighting with each other, you have two artists who have personas get up on a big 8 to 10 foot wide canvas, and they draw at each other, around each other's artwork to a theme, like let's say robots versus monsters, and the whole thing is announced by two improv comedian commentators. Okay, so during a show, you're going to see usually like anywhere from 2 to 4 matches, and 25 minutes. And every 5 minutes during a match, we roll this thing called the Wheel of Death, which is a big digital topic generator. It throws up things like cute animals on fire, Muppet burlesque, things like just things that can be taken in tons of different ways, but are also evocative of something funny.
Sure.
So every 5 minutes you get this, and you have to immediately throw it into the mix. So it's a lot of improv comedy. And then at the end of the bout, we judge the winner with a decibel reader, and whoever gets the loudest cheers wins the match. Now, we all have characters and costumes. We have somebody that dresses up in a big blue sort of dinosaur costume called Stompodon. We have, like a NASCAR race driver called Stevie Speed, an alien named Bunny, and I actually play a really, really bad Eastern European male model named Baron von Sexyful, who is a professional narcissist.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so we've been doing this for like 10 years. It's the weirdest thing you'll ever see. My favorite element of it is I've always wanted to, I've always been in bands, and haven't for the past 20 years, but when I was growing up, I was like always in a band and always, trying to get shows. Yeah. And as an artist, you never have that like rock star moment where people are screaming bloody murder for you. It's just not the name of the game. Yeah. And Art Fight kind of adds that in. And, we've gotten to, we play the Auto Bar all the time, which, and we've traveled all over the country. We've even played in Canada, and, it's cool to go to a place and have 1,000 people just like waiting to see this thing that they're like, I don't know what the hell this is, but I gotta see it. Yeah. So now with COVID, we were like, well, I guess we can't do shows. And our crew all like just took on different roles. And now we're like producing a Twitch show that has like graphics and sound. It's amazing. And I like didn't have too much to do with the production of it. Yeah. And it's just amazing to see how our crew has just stepped up and continued to have our show be a thing, even though it's, we can't be together. So
that is one of the coolest and weirdest and why haven't I been involved in it sort of things I've ever heard of. Look, I don't know what else to say.
There's nothing like it. And I didn't come up with the idea at all. I was like the first person that they're like, we don't know you, but we know you make pictures and wonder if you want to try this. And I was like, that's the greatest idea I've ever heard. and that was before the costumes and the characters. That was just, we're going to get up and we're going to have you draw fast on a wall and we're going to make funny jokes about it. And I was like, yeah, that's it. I'm good. Let's do that. And now it is this, we've done almost 200 live shows, and now we've done like 15 or so. Well, I guess 9 or 10 of these like internet versions of it. And like, it's just, you're right. It's about that what if, like, well, we're a bunch of nerds who nobody wants to see fight, or maybe they do, but we don't want to. So what if we turn drawing into a giant fight and just have fun with it? And it's amazing. It's so much fun.
Wow. Again, yeah, we'll be talking. It's a lot of fun. You already answered the question, actually. I was like, so what would your wrestling persona be? And I was like, well, you kind of already have it out there, because I look at, because I've watched wrestling for forever, and I watch a lot of wrestling, actually, and we kind of got into a place where it's just like, yeah, I see that wrestling's a parody and so on, and it has its things. So definitely looking at like the characters and all of that you've described, it's like, all right, I kind of see what they're going for here. I kind of see it now. let's see. I had another observation, a question. So with all the projects you've been involved in,
mm-hmm.
they it almost sounds like AKAs. Like it's like AKA this, AKA that. So how do you balance your time?
Well, that's a cool question, and it's one I actually get asked a lot because I would say that balance is the most important thing to me. And, like, so like I said, I work full time as a teacher, and I work an hour away from my, my job, my home. I work an hour and a half an hour from my home. So and between making comics and everything, really it's before I had a kid, it was just about just do everything and sleep when you can.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when my daughter became, I just remember being like, well, we are financially dependent on me working these 2 jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can't stop, but I also, I want to dad hard. I really want to do that thing to its fullest. And so like up until COVID, my rule was I will go to work, I will come home, and I am not allowed, with rare like emergency exceptions, I don't work on artwork until she's asleep.
Right.
Now with COVID and her school happening remotely, I will work while she works and be there coaching her through school and stuff like that. And have found that I really enjoy, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I really like teaching her math.
Oh,
yeah, I've had so much fun like figuring that out. Just doing school with her in general has just been really rewarding. But I think the balance comes from always trying to find ways to streamline your time. I've worked as a caricature artist, and that coupled with Super Art Fight, I think that I have developed the skill of finding good ways to work quickly without sacrificing quality. And I think that being a screen printer helps. That's not the most time intensive thing. But I think it's the search for balance that gives me balance more than actually being balanced, if that makes any sense at all.
No, it does. I had to come to a point where, so within the network, and I don't know, I get on this rant every now and again. If I drank the right amount of alcohol, I'll rant about it. I was like, I'm too talented for this shit. And anyway, so like at one point, I want to say, because I've been doing this, podcast thing for years. At one point, I did 5 different shows a week, and I did the show prep, the editing, the writing, all of that different stuff around it.
Oh my God.
I was just like, how do I balance this? And like, again, as I said before, I don't really get into reading. I kind of get the piece of information that I need, and then I move on unless it's for like entertainment and enjoyment and so on. But if it's something that I'm trying to learn a skill, I end up reading this segment from this book. And I read a few chapters of it, but the segment from this book that caught my eye was like the 4-hour work week. And it got me in this idea of like balancing time and stacking time. So I was like, all right, I want to do this creative thing. I still have to do my day job. So it's like, all right, how can I stack these 2 things? So I was like, I'm going to listen to podcasts on this particular topic so I feel fulfilled in this area. I'm going to work out, and when I work out, I'm going to find a way to play video games or read a book or something to do 2 things at once, because I was pursuing balance, because I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do all of these things that I want. So what things can be complementary of each other? I can't podcast and bike and lift weights, but I can maybe play a video game and feel that way about it, or read this book, or even get the audio version of this book to still kind of get the story and read along with it, maybe in other instances, but finding a way to stack those times and those projects. Or the other thing that I learned, because with doing the editing for the podcast, I was like spending a lot of time editing. So
editing is I mean, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But it's the biggest time suck. of any project. It's tough.
And you work with people, and hey man, you want to edit this podcast? Absolutely not. I was like, wise man. And I would go through it, and it's funny because the job I'm at now, the data analyst job, they found out about my podcasting background, and they got into podcasting, and they were like, "Would you be interested in editing?" And I was like, "Yeah, you should send that through my LLC," because it's a whole different process. But in it, I found an editor. I was like, I am attached to this. This is my baby. This is my art. All of that stuff. But I was like, what part of it can I take away? So if it takes me 2 hours of show prep minimum and an hour, maybe an hour and a half for the show, I was like, I'm already at 4 hours. If I do the editing, that's another 2 hours minimum. So it's like, that's a lot for that one episode. So if I can hand this off to an editor and he does it professionally and just sends it back, and all I have to do is worry about these other components, I was like, having that concept of like kind of juggling that time and stacking that time, that came out of it for me.
Yeah. Well, also finding people to work with, finding people you trust. For up until recently, I've only done comic projects that I have written and drawn, and I'm actually working on a project now with the writers of a book called The First Law of Mad Science, which is an amazing book. Don't ask me what the first law is. That's kind of I think the toughest part about that title. It's a great title, brings a lot of people to their convention table. But the whole point is that there isn't really a first answer. And so we can't talk about this. So, so I'm working on a project now where it's like, normally I write, I plot, I write, I script, I thumbnail, I pencil, I ink, I color, I letter, all of it, right? And then I have to go through, and I used to have a publisher, and money in comics is an oxymoron. And I from being a screen printer, I knew how to take a product and bring it to shows and make a living off of it, right?
Sure.
And so I was like, I'm just going to self-publish from here on out, because I know where the money goes and where it's coming from, and I can handle that. I can access Kickstarter. But again, it's still like, it would take me like 3 years to do an entire project. And then it's like 3 more years till the next one. Right. So I'm finally doing this thing where I helped come up with the idea, and there's back and forth in it. But all I had to do was thumbnail and do the inked line art for the whole book, which is a big job, but it was amazing to have something that was incomplete and said, here you go.
Yeah.
Now this is yours. And we can talk about it and we can go back and forth about it. But like, the idea of having people to collaborate with is the most amazing thing, especially once you've built that relationship of trust and are like, oh, I know you're going to do great things with this. And I'm sure it's like that with your editor, where it's like, nah, you've got me. We're good.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't ask because he also is a producer, like he's doing music, and because he's a musician, and he got into editing as like a way to make money, because he was just like, he's like, the musician gig isn't really working as well as I thought it would be, but people need their audio edited. So I was just like, also, if you got something that you think would fit what we're doing, I trust what you do, and you've been our editor for like the last 3 years. So, and he's British too, which kind of adds to it for me. It's like, we always make fun of him. It's like, can you just put in a tea kettle blowing or something? And he just,
oh no,
he gets really tight. And he's just like, all right, guys. So the last question I have, and then I'll get into the real quick hitters, and then shameless plug time for you. Okay. Best piece of advice you've gotten working in comics?
Oh. It's the advice that I always, and I got this. I got this from the guys at 215 Inc.
Okay.
Which is it's a small indie publishing company, and the guys who are running it, I was like really trying to find a publisher for the creators, and at some point I kept like talking to them, and they're like, "What? You've been published? Well, just put it out, man. Just to do it." Like there's a guy that I worked with Super Art Fight, Jamie Noguchi, who his catchphrase has always been, and I don't know if I have to edit myself, but I'm gonna. But it's effing do it. And he's made T-shirts. He has a podcast called the actual word, the effing do it podcast, and I think that's the best advice I ever got. Just do it. I have so many people who will come up to my table and they'll want to talk to me about their project. And which I love. I'm so honored that somebody would see me and what I do and be like, this is a person I want to share what I do with, and maybe they'll have insight. I mean, the advice I always give them is they'll start talking about the world that they've built and that they've conceived. And I'll be like, well, what have you done so far? And I'll be like, well, I'm still just world building. I haven't really done anything. And I'm not an artist. I think I found a person, but all these stuff that, like, these roadblocks that get in the way. And they're all long-term goal roadblocks. And I was like, I mean, all you need to do is, which is a lot, but like, if you want to make a comic, make a comic. Yeah. You don't have to take on the entire thing of what you're going to do. Just pick a little story from this world that you're so passionate about and just tell a little story. And then, like, there's so many easy ways to print a comic affordably. Like, go print 25 copies, bring them to your local comic shop and say, hey, can I sit down and try to sell a couple of these one day? And then if you do that, maybe a convention, and at the end of the year, after you've made a comic, and if you still want to do it, then you've done the right thing. Yeah. But you can't know if you like doing something until you actually do it. So the best advice I've gotten, and the one I always give, is just make it. Whatever it is you want to do, just do that.
Too often people just get in their own way, get in their own spot, and just they make a copy of themselves. They Dr. Manhattan themselves. They get on all fours, and then they trip over themselves. That is what happens, in my opinion. And like we did our 10th anniversary show almost a year to the date, like last year, and we were it all came about from just a relationship that I kind of stumbled upon with the guys at Big Improv. And they were like, can we, would you like to be here regularly? Would you like to record here? We know that you've been podcasting, like we listened to your show. I was like, great, fantastic. And we started recording there every week, and, we've talked and had all of these different conversations. I hit them with the notion. I was like, we're doing our 10th year show. Can we kind of just post up here? And I knew nothing about, like, organizing the shows. That's another thing that I've done with any of the live shows we do. I'm a project manager. I'm doing all of this different stuff. And around this time last year, I'm much more comfortable, despite being in a pandemic and the racial instability and all of the stuff that's happening. I'm in a much better spot than I was last year. I was like, I'll burn everyone. We're putting up posters. Because we were out there doing Artscape, putting up our posters for the show, and we found out that later that day, someone took all of our posters down. So we were out there sweating our asses off. As I put it, I sweated off part of my ethnicity last year. And some jacks, they just took all our stuff down. I was just like crestfallen. I was like, man, but we had a great turnout. We got a video of it, and it was dope. And, it was exactly what I wanted it to be. But it was just like quickly learning something, and I wasn't letting anything kind of getting that way, especially myself, getting that way of not doing it. I was just like, we're just going to get it done. We're just going to get it done. That's just what's going on in my head. It's like there's no failure, just getting it done. Yeah. So the last questions I have, quick hitters, and then we'll get to some shameless plugs, and then I'll give you back the rest of your afternoon. So these are Baltimore questions. This is a Baltimore podcast.
Awesome.
Best crab cake.
Oh,
Who
easy.
has it?
Easy. Coco's.
Okay, another one in the Coco column, because I think.
So, may I qualify this statement?
Please.
So, because this is an argument that I as far as picking up from a restaurant, that is the best. I've heard the G&Ms. I've had the G&M. Mm-hmm. It's very good. It's Coco's all the way. So there's also that I gotta say my second favorite is not from a restaurant. So there's Papa's, right? Now, okay. Papa's is like when you go to the restaurant, the crab cake is good. It's good. Mm-hmm. But they also have like a little fish market right across the street from there. And those things are bananas good. Like, so yeah, the restaurant, fine. The one that they like sell, like they're good, but they're not like the best I've ever had. But right across the street, the place that they also own that just like, I call ahead and I go and I pick up a bag and bring it home.
Yeah.
Incredible. So yeah, I'm curious, what's yours?
I like now I have to try them because I've not had Papa's, and I've heard, what is it? Coco's.
Oh yeah.
Cool. I haven't had either of those because I've been making my own for the last few years. I try to do a Japanese influenced crab cake.
Ooh.
And I've been smoking them recently because I've bought a smoker. So that's the lane I'm in. That's the place I'm living. But what's the place in Little Italy? Damn it. I like theirs. I'm blanking on the name because it's been a while since I've actually gone out and bought a crab cake. But that would be it. But I'm very interested in Papa's because I've heard multiple people mention it. Since I've brought this question into the show, multiple people have mentioned it.
I'm so glad to hear that. Not the restaurant. Go to the little market. That market has the greatest fried clams ever.
Okay.
I love fried clams, but I can't stand when you're just sitting there like, I think that was more than fried breading. These things are like eating thumbs. It's delicious. Not that I support thumb eating.
I do actually.
Okay.
So we're a pro thumb eating podcast here. So Moe's is actually the place that was my crab cake location for a long time. Ooh. It's one of those things I inherited from my dad. They have the location in Towson and the one in Little Italy. And they do that stuffed shrimp, which is basically like a crab cake with a big jumbo shrimp in it. It's fire. But yeah, I need to explore. That's a new project I'm thinking of. Like I wanted to do and this is inside baseball, I guess, but a travel show for Baltimoreans by Baltimoreans, because I think it's a lot of places people don't check out. And it's like, who has the best crab cake? Let's put them up. Let's check them out. Let's go there and grab a friend and go get something to eat is the tagline I'm using.
I mean, if you're looking for taste testers for that show, I know a guy,
Then the last question, since it's summer and it's sweltering and all of that stuff for most of the time, best Snowball flavor.
So we actually have a Snowball stand at a garden center, like a local little called Walther Gardens.
Okay.
And I am one that when it comes to flavors like that, it's hard for me to pick a flavor because I am so I'm a pretty adventurous eater.
Sure.
With one exception, there's nothing I won't eat, or at least try. I have my preferences and all. But this place does some insanely cool combinations of flavors. And I've had I think I had like a cardamom and peanut butter there, or like just crazy. And that to me, or like an elderflower and pear with marsh, and I was just like in heaven because it was like, I'll try this and this and this, and I'd love going back there because it was the weirdest flavors. So it's hard for me to tell you because most Snowball flavors are not that much different than like Flavor Ice flavors.
Sure.
So saying your favorite is just kind of saying your mood. So I'm more in the team adventure than the team like those original flavors. Yeah. I hope that's a good enough answer.
No. That sounds good because there are certain places like that location in Hamden with the Quality Snowball stand. They have all of these different things there. Like they're like the doors of this storage unit or whatever their place is out of is just filled with the names and the types and flavors that they have. And I was like, all right, cool. But as a purist.
Oh God, I do have a favorite.
Yeah.
Hamilton Tavern. In the summer during the Hamilton Street Festival. So that's way northeast Baltimore.
Yeah.
They have a damn good burger. They would do cocktail snowballs. And they would do watermelon mint cocktail snowballs. And they were with tequila. They were awesome. That's the best Snowball I've ever had. Hands down. I totally forgot about it. 100%.
So that's actually a good one. I think the quality Snowball, they do one, and they have I think it may have the mint in there. You have like pieces like sprigs of mint or what have you, and really smallly cubed up watermelon. And I was just like, all right, you guys are cheating. These ingredients are a little too quality for a Snowball. But my go-to, and I stumbled upon it. So for the longest time, I kind of didn't really support my Baltimore flavor profiles. I was like, I'm not eating any egg custard. And now egg custard is kind of my go-to.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the day, we used to sew, not Snowballs, but frozen cups here. And my family sold frozen cups. So we would try all these different things, but because we were goofy kids, I'll try the Batman flavor. I'll try the Superman flavor. It's just a color. It's not a flavor. So now I get a combination because I'm a bit of an adventurous eater, but I'm more of these flavors work well together. Let's just go this direction. I do a half coconut and a half egg custard, and it's a fire combination. It's very tasty.
Oh man, that sounds good. That sounds really good.
It'll probably be better with alcohol. So now that I know, maybe with like rum.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, and if you ever late July, it's usually the weekend or two after Artscape. Hamilton Fest, the Hamilton Tavern will always have these like crazy combination alcohol. Oh, they're the best, man.
Noted. So here's the last few minutes we have. And again, thank you for joining the show. This has been great.
Oh, this has been awesome. Thank you for having me, man.
Totally. So, links, stuff, social media, any information you want to put out there, anybody you want to, put us on to, or any events you have coming up virtually or what have you, or anything to check out. Here's your time.
So, let's see. For me, I'm pretty easy to find. My company name is Spaghetti Kiss, like Lady and the Tramp, but the imagery is more like two monsters with multiple tongues making out. It's the label on the back. So that's my clothing line, and it's pretty much what I go by everywhere online. So, Instagram, Tumblr, all that kind of stuff. I would say Super Art Fight is very much worth checking out.
Yes.
I don't think I'm on the show this weekend, but we do have one. It's if you go to Super Art Fight, at Super Art Fight everywhere, you can check out a lot of what we do, and you can find things that Baron von Sexyful has done on the YouTube page. And we're on Twitch, so twitch.tv/Super Art Fight. We do a show every other Saturday. I guess that's pretty much it. I think those, because I know with the comics, everything you can find for me is just, again, it's just Spaghetti Kiss, so I'm easy.
Yeah, then that's great. And again, thank you for coming on the show. That's that. So for Michael, I'm Rob Lee, and I'm saying this art all around.